Sarah Martinez was crouched at the 500-yard target line, swapping out a set of shot-up silhouettes, when she heard raised voices coming from the firing positions behind her. It wasn't her business. She usually made it a point to stay invisible during military sessions, but the tension was hard to ignore. A group of Navy SEALs had been training all morning, but their newest guy, Rodriguez, was clearly struggling with what should have been straightforward long-range shots. "I'm telling you, there's something off with this rifle," Rodriguez snapped, setting the weapon down hard enough to make Sarah flinch from 100 yards away. Chief Petty Officer Jake Sullivan, his team leader, didn't look impressed. He crossed his arms, watching silently, his jaw tight. Sarah had been observing Rodriguez for over an hour, purely out of habit. His problems were obvious to her. His breathing was erratic, grip too tight, and his trigger pull looked more like he was punching a button on a vending machine than firing precision shots. Then he said it. "This thing is completely messed up," Rodriguez muttered, stepping away from the rifle like it had insulted him. And without thinking, Sarah called out, "The rifle's fine. You're pulling your shots left because you're anticipating the recoil." The silence that followed was immediate and sharp. Every SEAL on the line turned toward her. A 23-year-old college student in range gear had just publicly corrected a Navy SEAL. The day had started normally for Sarah. She'd shown up at Oceanside Range just before 6 a.m., prepping the long-distance lanes for a full day of military booking. Her supervisor had warned her the SEALs were training, so she expected to stay in the background, keep the targets up, sweep brass, and avoid eye contact. That was how she'd operated for the last 8 months. Not out of fear, but out of an understanding. Range staff weren't expected to talk, just to do. Most of the military folks preferred it that way, and honestly, Sarah didn't mind. The job wasn't her dream, just a temporary solution to help pay for nursing school. Her dad's Marine Corps disability pension helped, but tuition was brutal, and the flexible hours here beat working late-night shifts at a diner. What Sarah hadn't anticipated when she took the job was how much she'd end up learning. Every shooter was different, every stance and adjustment a lesson. Over time, she began mentally cataloging what worked, what didn't, and what separated a decent shot from a great one. Her dad, Gunnery Sergeant Miguel Martinez, retired Marine Corps sniper and all-around hard-ass, had taught her how to shoot when she was 12. Their weekend sessions weren't about fun, they were about discipline. He'd always said, "Shooting's like surgery. You need patience, precision, and control under pressure." That voice, his voice, was in her head when she corrected Rodriguez. The SEALs had rolled in just after 7 a.m. in matte black SUVs, carrying enough gear to suggest they'd be there all day. Sarah recognized the type immediately: serious, quiet professionals who spoke in clipped phrases and moved like they didn't waste energy on anything unnecessary. Sullivan stood out from the rest, not because he barked orders, but because people naturally looked to him. Then there was Rodriguez. Young, eager, a little too eager. He walked like someone trying to prove something. Sarah had seen it before, mostly in civilian shooters who showed up with flashy gear but couldn't group shots to save their lives. But Rodriguez wasn't a weekend warrior. He was a Navy SEAL. His lack of control made no sense. From her spot downrange, she'd had a clear view of his setup. His posture was off, left elbow too far under. Body weight shifted wrong. His cheek weld wasn't consistent, and his trigger pull was a jerky slap instead of a clean press. The rifle he was using was high-end, match-grade ammo, optics that probably cost more than Sarah's car, and yet his shot pattern was scattered like a shotgun blast. As she watched him, Sarah kept thinking, breathe, relax, follow through. She whispered those things to herself, as if somehow he might hear, but he didn't. And no one on his team seemed in a rush to help him fix his mistakes, just jokes and shoulder shrugs. Only Jake seemed to be watching closely, brow furrowed, tracking every error. When Rodriguez finally lost it and blamed the weapon, Sarah's instincts kicked in. Her dad had drilled it into her for years. Never blame the tool. Fix the shooter first. You master yourself before you ever blame your gear, he'd say. And somehow, those words became her own, out loud, with 8 elite SEALs staring her down like she'd grown a second head. Jake broke the silence. "You think you can do better?" he asked, not confrontational, more curious than anything. Rodriguez scoffed. Seriously? She's a college kid. She changes paper targets for a living. Jake ignored him. His gaze stayed on Sarah. She swallowed. Her dad's voice echoed again. Don't open your mouth unless you're sure you can back it up. So she nodded. Jake picked up the rifle Rodriguez had tossed and handed it to her after checking the chamber. All right, he said. Rodriguez has been trying to hit that steel all morning. You hit it, I buy lunch for the team. You miss, and you explain to my CO why a civilian touched our equipment. Sarah's heart pounded, but her hands didn't shake. She took the rifle and studied it, not just the scope and stock, but how it felt compared to her dad's hunting rifle. Heavier, more balanced. Not unfamiliar, just different. She could feel the weight of every eye on her, the mocking ones, the skeptical ones, and Jake's, watchful, maybe even hopeful. What's your background? He asked. Military family, Sarah replied, flipping the safety and inspecting the action out of habit. My dad's a retired Marine, Gunnery Sergeant Miguel Martinez. He taught me to shoot when I was 12. We've trained together almost every weekend since. One of the older SEALs with a streak of gray in his hair let out a low whistle. Gunny Martinez? Miguel? Sarah looked up, startled. You know him. Know of him, the SEAL said, his tone shifting to something closer to respect. Scout sniper school instructor. Taught half my unit before his injury. Guy was a legend. That changed the energy immediately. Rodriguez's smirk faded. Even the others looked a little more interested, a little less dismissive. Jake gestured toward the 500-yard target. Same target, same win. Match grade 168 grain, 0 to 100 yards. You good? Sarah nodded again. Her mouth was dry, but her breathing was steady. Before I shoot, she said, surprising herself with how calm her voice sounded, can I show you what Rodriguez was doing wrong? Might help him understand why he was missing. Rodriguez looked like he wanted to object, but Jake cut him off with a nod. Go ahead. Sarah settled into the prone position, mimicking Rodriguez's form first. His elbow was too far under, like this, she explained, shifting her weight. Creates an unstable base. Watch what happens when I adjust. See the difference in platform? She walked through each detail. Grip tension, shoulder placement, trigger finger technique. Your grip should be firm, not tight, like holding a bird. Tight enough it doesn't fly off, gentle enough not to crush it. There were nods now. Even Rodriguez seemed to be listening. She placed her finger on the trigger and added, you slap the trigger like you were trying to surprise yourself. That throws your shot. The press should be slow, steady. You're supposed to be surprised the rifle went off, not shocked because you jerked it. Jake smiled faintly. Textbook. Then he nodded. All right, Martinez. Let's see you do it. Sarah eased into position, making tiny adjustments until everything felt right. The rifle's scope was clearer than what she was used to. The glass crisp, the reticle razor sharp. At 500 yards, the steel target stood motionless, a small white square against the dusty hillside. The wind whispered across the range, brushing her left cheek. 5 to 7 miles per hour, steady. She made the mental adjustment. Then she paused. One more thing, she said, glancing back at Rodriguez, whose arms were now folded across his chest, his expression unreadable. You were holding your breath too long. That builds tension. Your heart rate spikes and your whole upper body tightens. You want to catch the natural respiratory pause. She inhaled, then exhaled halfway and held. Her heart rate slowed. Her pulse evened out. The crosshairs steadied on the center of the target. And then, with calm, even pressure, she began the trigger press. The rifle cracked. Through the scope, Sarah saw the puff of dust bloom just behind the steel plate. Center mass. She worked the bolt smoothly and fired again. Then a third time. Crack. Crack. 3 shots, deliberate and composed. When she lifted her head, the only sound was the distant crash of waves against the cliffs beyond the range. The line behind her was silent. Jake was still behind the spotting scope, unmoving. Then he lowered it slowly. 3 shots, 2-inch group. Dead center, he said. His voice wasn't surprised, it was impressed. Sarah sat up, the adrenaline hitting her full force now. Her hands were suddenly trembling, just a bit, and her breath came faster than she expected. She glanced behind her. The SEALs were staring, not in disbelief, but something closer to respect. "You've been practicing," Jake said, handing the rifle back to her with a smirk. "Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" Sarah safed the weapon and set it gently on the bench. "My dad," she said simply, "every Saturday since I was 12. Rodriguez stared at her, eyes wide. "That's not normal. Nobody hits a 2-inch group like that on their first try with someone else's rifle." "It wasn't her first try," Jake replied, watching Sarah closely. "This is someone who's been shooting seriously for a long time." Then he asked, "Why are you here? I mean, why aren't you competing professionally or teaching?" Sarah looked down, a little embarrassed. "I'm in nursing school. This is just a job to help pay for classes." One of the other SEALs, Marcus Webb, the older one with the gray streak, stepped forward. "Your dad never mentioned that you shoot like this?" "He knows I'm decent," she said, shrugging. "We shoot for fun. It's not a big deal." Webb shook his head. "No, what you just did wasn't decent. That was expert-level shooting. Under pressure, with an audience." He glanced at the other SEALs, then back at her. "Most people fall apart when they know someone's watching. You didn't flinch." Sarah felt herself flush. She wasn't used to this kind of praise. Her father never made a big deal out of her skills. He treated competence as an expectation, not something to celebrate. "Can you do it again?" Rodriguez asked suddenly, his tone no longer mocking. There was curiosity there now. "I mean, maybe that was just luck." Jake held up a hand before Sarah could reply. "Rodriguez, stand down. She's already proven her point." Then he turned to Sarah, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "But I'm curious. You didn't just make the shot. You diagnosed Rodriguez's technique from 50 yards away, without saying a word. Where'd that come from?" Sarah thought about it. "I've been working here for 8 months. You watch enough people shoot, you start to recognize the patterns. My dad always said teaching someone to shoot is harder than learning to shoot, because you have to understand why they're missing, not just how to hit the target." Webb nodded slowly. "Smart man, your father," and clearly passed it on. Before anyone else could speak, the sound of gravel crunching under tires turned heads. A black government sedan pulled up to the main office. The man who stepped out wore navy dress blues, his posture sharp and authoritative. He made his way toward them with practiced confidence. Jake's voice dropped. "That's Commander Harrison, Range Commanding Officer. He's here for a progress check." Sarah felt her stomach drop. She was still holding a Navy rifle, having just fired it without permission, and now the CO was heading straight toward them. Commander Harrison stopped in front of the group, his gaze sweeping over the scene. He took in the rifle, the gathered SEALs, and finally Sarah. "Chief Sullivan," he said, "how's the training going?" "Very well, sir," Jake replied smoothly. "In fact, we've had some unexpected assistance today." He gestured toward Sarah. "This is Sarah Martinez. Her father is Gunnery Sergeant Miguel Martinez, Scout Sniper School, pre-injury." Harrison's eyebrows lifted. "Martinez. I remember that name. Excellent instructor. What kind of assistance are we talking about?" Jake didn't hesitate. "Miss Martinez identified some technical issues with one of our shooters' form and offered a correction. Then demonstrated a 3-shot group at 500 yards that qualifies for our advanced marksmanship standard." The commander looked directly at Sarah. "Is that so?" Sarah cleared her throat. "Yes, sir. I work here part-time and shoot recreationally with my father. That's all." "Recreationally," he echoed, stepping over to the spotting scope. He peered through it for a long moment, then stepped back. "That's not recreational shooting. That's precision work." He turned to Jake. "You said she diagnosed and corrected another shooter?" "Yes, sir, and coached it as well as any of our instructors." The commander gave Sarah another once-over, then turned back to Jake. "I want to hear more about this later. For now, carry on." Jake nodded. "Yes, sir." As the commander walked away, the silence returned. Sarah's heart hadn't quite settled. Jake stepped closer, keeping his voice low. "You didn't just impress a SEAL team. You caught the attention of our CO. That doesn't happen every day." Sarah shook her head, still processing. "I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just Couldn't watch him blame the rifle. Jake smiled slightly. That's exactly why you did prove something. There was a beat. Then Jake added, would you be interested in sitting in on a few of our advanced training sessions? Unofficially, you've got an eye for fundamentals, and some of our newer guys could benefit. Sarah blinked. You're serious? As a heart attack, Webb added. You've got something rare. We'd be stupid not to use it. Sarah hesitated, then nodded slowly. I'd be honored. Jake clapped her on the shoulder. Good. I'll talk to your supervisor. We'll make it happen. Sarah stood there stunned as the SEALs began packing up gear. What started as a normal morning had turned into something much more. And as she watched Jake and Webb exchange quiet words near the vehicles, she realized that one moment, speaking up, when she could have stayed silent, had opened a door she didn't even know existed. By the following week, Sarah found herself standing behind the firing line once again. This time, not as the quiet daughter of the range master, but as a silent observer during one of SEAL Team Echo's advanced long-range training sessions. Jake had kept his word. Her boss was looped in, cleared it through command, and now Sarah had a red visitor badge clipped to her belt and a blank notebook in her hand. She watched everything, the setups, the subtle tells of tension in a shooter's jaw, the difference in posture between confidence and compensation. She wasn't there to teach, but she took notes like she would be quizzed afterward. Rodriguez, to his credit, hadn't spoken a word to her that first morning, but on the third day as Sarah walked past the benches, he called out without looking up from his rifle. You see anything wrong with this form? She stopped. He adjusted slightly, elbow tucked a bit too tight, support hand clenched rather than relaxed. You're gripping with your left hand, Sarah said quietly. Just rest it. You're fighting the rifle. He didn't say anything, just adjusted and fired. The spotter called out, dead center. Rodriguez looked up and gave her a short nod. That was it. Respect in that world didn't come with applause. It came with silence, followed by an unspoken invitation to stay. Over the next 2 months, Sarah became a quiet fixture around the training facility. She never overstepped, never offered advice unless asked. But when she was asked, it usually changed the outcome of the drill. Her feedback was short, mechanical, and sharp. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. That's what impressed them. Jake took notice. Ever thought about qualifying officially? He asked one afternoon, while cleaning his gear beside her. You're already better than most of our instructors on trigger discipline and win calls. Sarah shrugged. I'm not military. I don't think I'd fit in. He smiled. Neither did half of us before we joined. Then a little more seriously. There's an instructor course next month. Civilian observers allowed, but rare. I can put in a word if you want it. She stared at him. Why are you doing this? Jake was quiet for a moment, then said, because talent wasted is a crime, and because you didn't wait for permission to step up when it mattered. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood at the edge of the observation platform, clipboard in hand as the instructor cadre ran their assessments. She wasn't firing today. She was watching, listening, learning the way Jake had learned, by being close to people whose experience came at the price of real risk. Midway through the session, a group of visiting officers arrived. Among them, Commander Harrison. He scanned the training field, eyes finally landing on Sarah. He gave a curt nod before turning to speak with the lead instructor. But then something changed. One of the visiting officers, a civilian contractor, decided to test a new sniper optic system. It was state-of-the-art, supposedly adaptive, and designed to simplify the firing process. They mounted it on the Black Talon rifle, a weapon Jake rarely allowed anyone else to handle. The contractor smirked as he set up. Let's see if the system can hit a moving target at 1,000 yards with wind drift. Sarah frowned. The scope hasn't been calibrated for this range. The Mirage is strong today. He'll miss. Jake looked at her. How sure are you? She didn't blink. 95%. He's trusting a system that doesn't understand the conditions. The man fired. Miss. Then again. Another miss. Commander Harrison turned, clearly annoyed. That's enough. We're not here for showboating. But the contractor, frustrated now, said, let's see your range girl take a shot then. The air went cold. Sarah froze. Jake stiffened. That's enough, Harrison repeated. But Jake stepped forward. Sir, with your permission, let's give her one round. Harrison turned to Sarah. Are you willing? She nodded. Yes, sir. The black talon felt heavier than she expected, not in weight, but in reputation. It was a weapon passed down between SEAL instructors, scarred, worn, but flawless in performance. She dropped prone, breathing slowly. Wind, 10 mass rank left to right. Mirage was heavy. She dialed in, then adjusted manually, ignoring the Smart Scope's default rangefinder. Target, an E-type silhouette swinging laterally on cables 1,000 yards out. She exhaled. The wind dropped half a notch. She held. Crack. The plate rocked backward with a solid metallic clang. Dead center. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Jake grinned and whispered, "That's my girl." Commander Harrison simply nodded once more. "You ever decide nursing school's not your path," he said to Sarah, "I know a few people who'd train you." That night, back at the range, Sarah sat alone on one of the benches as the sun began to set. The smell of cordite still hung faintly in the air, mixed with ocean wind. She stared at her hands, calloused, steady. The same hands that used to stack first aid kits, clean wounds, refill brass buckets. Jake walked up, quiet. "You good?" She nodded. "Just thinking." "About?" Sarah looked out toward the distant hillside. "I've always been in the background, watching, cleaning, supporting. But I think," she turned to him, "I think I'm ready to stop hiding behind my father's shadow. I want to earn my own." Jake smiled. "You already have." Then he handed her something, a patch, dark gray, stitched with the SEAL trident in subdued thread. Not official, not military issued, just symbolic. "Webb had it made," Jake said. "He said it's not for your uniform, it's for your rifle bag. You've earned it, Martinez. Not because of your name, because you showed up when it counted." She stared at the patch for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you." As the stars began to emerge overhead, Sarah picked up her rifle bag, clipped the patch onto the strap, and walked down the path toward her car. She wasn't just the girl who cleaned up after others anymore. She was the one they called when precision mattered, when silence wasn't fear, but focus. And this time, when she looked through the scope, it wasn't her father's lessons she remembered. It was her own confidence echoing back.